Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
And we were just finishing up about the buskers and the conversation.
Yeah,
It went on
yeah.
quite a bit, and I guess it was that an unanimous vote? I forget. There was,
I
they
think
changed
so.
a lot of the language. They got
Yeah.
rid of the fee.
So this is the Street Performers Ordinance,
right,
which has
street
been in effect since, I think, early to mid-90s.
Right.
A good friend of mine was a street performer, and actually I had street performers living in my first floor apartment at one point.
Wow.
There was a group called Not the Beatles that used to play in Harvard Square, and Luke Hansberger was sort of the main man, and he was my first floor tenant for a while, and a friend. He was actually my office mate for a while too. So
So, and
so
they-
I used to hang around with a lot of these folks.
And each of them, if there was a group, they each had to get a permit?
Yeah, so the thing is that I think you could, right, I believe that was how it was. But I think most of the street performers were not there as a group, but I think all four
Yeah.
of them had to individually have
Right.
permits, right? Of course, if somebody kind of sat in with the band on a given night, nobody was going to
Yeah.
ask them for a permit, right?
Right.
You know, can you imagine that? Say, hey, do you mind if I play harmonica with the group
Yeah.
here tonight?
Again,
They say, I'm sorry.
enforcement,
Do you
right.
have your?
Yeah,
Do
unless
you
somebody.
do you have a permit?
Yeah.
Well, I think, but the thing is that there's the intent of the law
Right.
and the spirit of the law, right? And the letter of the law, right? So if the idea was simply to regulate volume of bands or the location or where they could or couldn't play, or to make sure they weren't kind of competing in an unfair way with each other, that's sort of what the Street Performers Ordinance was really meant to regulate. It wasn't meant to regulate whether a guy playing harmonica would sit in with the band, right? So
No.
So I don't think there was anybody from the Arts Council or the sound monitors who were ever going to raise an issue about anything.
When
like
you
that.
say sound monitors, they're assigned to
Yeah,
squares?
I don't know whether they
They're
still
not
are.
there.
Well, the thing is that the street performers in Harvard Square are far, in my senses, they're far fewer than they used to be.
And is that because of the fees?
I don't think it has anything to do with the fees. It
Okay.
has to do with the clientele. I mean, the thing is that
Good point. Yeah.
everything changed. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a day a lot of people would just go up to Harvard Square to hang out. Now
But
it's-
wasn't there given the impression by some councilors a while ago that it was our fees that were that was more inviting to go to Boston and Somerville?
I think that was never really
Okay,
true.
yeah.
I mean, there have been a few characters, I won't name the names, but there were particular performers who were opposed to having the fees in the first place, or even the requirement that there be
A permit?
a permit.
Oh, that's crazy.
There were also some objections about whether if a person wanted to make artwork and sell it, could you do that?
Good point.
So is that street
Yeah.
performance or
They do that all the time
sales?
around Harvard Square, the subway stop. I
and
see people sell things.
I will confess ignorance here and
Yeah.
say I don't exactly remember what
Yeah.
the legality of
Yeah,
whether you can
really.
sell your wares.
I guess
there
unless
is.
somebody complains, I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
peddler. You're a peddler.
Right, but the thing is that so you'd have to have some permit
Is there
to
a
do
peddler
that.
license? That name is so old school.
Yeah, they have some very kind of bizarre licensure
Vendor, yeah.
requirements that if
Okay.
there's another place like for example, if I wanted to set up a hot dog stand, they say, well, if there's a brick and mortar hot dog place
You can't
within
sell it in
100
your little
feet,
stand,
300
right,
feet,
yeah,
can
okay.
I do it? And they say, no, you can't.
Okay. That's interesting.
I'm more of the New York Canal Street mindset, which basically says,
Yeah.
let's just have a free for all.
Yeah.
You want to sell stuff.
Well, you are. Well, then you wouldn't.
I like
then,
that.
Well, then forget the permits. Have everybody
Well,
out.
all right.
I
So,
mean,
but the thing is, if it becomes
but the artists
unwieldy-
themselves are asking for the permits. They're saying it gives them
Yeah.
protections, or at least.
No. It was actually Stephen
Yeah.
Baird and others who really got the Street Performers Ordinance in. It wasn't because of I don't think it had anything to do with the problems from the adjacent business owners who were bothered by the street performers. Though some were, I'm sure. But it was just more to sort of smooth things out among street performers. So, and it works well. I mean, it's been around 20 years, and I think for the most part it's been fine.
So
But
we
so
go
they-
from 40 to 15 to nothing.
To
Although,
nothing, yeah.
is it approved, or does it have to go now to? What was the result of the?
Well, they passed it to a second reading, so
So
now...
it goes to the ordinance.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't
Oh.
have to go back to the ordinance committee
Oh.
at all. So
Second reading in front of who?
city council.
So then you can have public comment about
I mean,
it.
yeah, second reading is kind of it's funny these
Okay, I didn't realize
in
that.
legislative language these things can mean funny things. So
Okay.
second reading is it's a requirement that to pass an ordinance, including a zoning ordinance, you must pass it to a second reading.
And
which
then it
puts
goes
it in
to
the
the-
queue,
okay.
sticks it onto
I see.
unfinished business,
I see.
and then they can act on
Okay.
it just by either a majority vote for an ordinance or a supermajority vote, a 2/3 vote for a zoning change.
Okay.
Or sometimes even a 3/4 vote, right? But you have to go through the second reading, which is kind of funny because in other legislatures, I think the Massachusetts state legislature, when you send something to the committee on third reading, that's called
Third reading.
killing the bill.
Ha!
That's so if you
Means
send it,
like
let's send it for a third
Yeah,
reading.
meaning we
That
really
means
don't want
let's
this.
never look
Yeah.
at this again.
Okay, well, that's
So
interesting.
The last thing you wanted in
Is
the
the
state
third- yeah.
legislature is be sent to for third reading.
Well,
Right.
I confess I did not look at the whole language thing. Did you?
No.
But there was something about fires, and I guess Quentin Zondervan objected to that,
Yeah.
which I thought was.
I mean, if you
really
have somebody who would
strange.
juggle torches or something like that,
I'm
then
sorry, I don't want open fires. I mean,
Yeah.
I kept thinking of California,
You know,
and thinking, really?
I mean,
Are we
maybe
objecting to
we're,
that?
we're showing some appropriate caution. I mean, the
Hello?
thing is, unless if the person who was not the most skilled juggler and they were juggling
Well-
torches, and then there was somebody with a foofy dress nearby.
But we are lucky
and
we're
then
living in this environment.
Right.
What if we're living in it didn't rain for like
Right.
5 months? You know, I just
Right,
feel
but-
like
but
that's
the
just
thing
such
is,
a minor
mistakes
thing.
could happen, and you could light somebody's clothing up
Or
on
a
fire or
little
whatever.
kid could,
so.
who knows?
So, I
I'm
don't
just
know.
saying, that's so, to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
let's not.
small part of it all, but you know, it's like
I mean, the one thing I agree with, eliminating the fee would eliminate, there was a whole thing about homeless. I don't know how many homeless people acquire or want to do
Well,
open
I
anything,
think
but,
some city councilors, one in particular,
Yeah.
is showing a certain predilection for micromanagement.
and
And so, in other words, if the Arts Council representatives have worked it out with the artist community to sort of, and they've come to some understanding about what could or should be
Yeah.
regulated, it is a little weird when in the end the city council comes in and says, well, how do you feel about the use of fire? Well, you know, they already worked that out,
Yeah.
you know, and I
they
think-
don't say the use of it, they objected to the fact that
Right.
it wasn't allowed. That's
Right,
what I heard,
right.
but,
But the thing is, you know,
and
you
then
do-
the homeless thing.
Right.
Was it, but that, I think that was in the language, wasn't it?
Maybe,
Homeless?
I think it is, yes, yeah.
But then,
I mean,
like,
I think this is one of the things that actually kicked off this latest revision, is that there were certain individuals who they actually wanted to give a break to, and then, so they ended up lowering fees for everybody, and now apparently.
all right,
if it
I'm
goes
going to
through,
bring
they'll
up
get rid of
something
it.
very controversial here, but
Uh-oh.
I just realized this.
Well,
Okay,
that was
so
my
a
job.
homeless person is going out and doing some kind of act or something, and even regular buskers, they do have usually a pot where you can put money, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So does that mean you could have a homeless person really that needs funds and is just going to have a harmonica?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
well then, okay. I'm
Yeah.
just
I mean, you know,
I'm throwing it out there because I think that's sort of, it's very
You know,
thin line here between,
no, it's true.
you know, asking for money and then,
When
you
I
know.
was growing up in New York, in Queens, in Flushing, there was a guy named John Henry. I think his name was John Henry, but he played accordion, and he
Okay.
was blind. And
oh, well, you have the classic with
and-
the cup, the
yeah.
Seinfeld episode
Yeah,
where
yeah.
he was actually undercover,
Yeah.
remember that?
And I will say that I'm going to tell you this is like funny, like I'm going off on crazy tangents.
Yeah,
now,
go ahead.
Right?
I like
But
crazy
so you know, he was like a fixture on Roosevelt Avenue in Flushing, New York.
Yeah.
You know, the guy with the
Yeah.
you know, and you pass him by all the time. Sometimes you put some money in the cup or whatever, right? You know. And then my friend Alan was the last student of Reverend Gary Davis, who's one of the really great blues guitarists. And you know, and really looked up to Gary Davis and played really beautifully, just like Gary Davis.
Uh-huh.
And we were good friends, so I'd go over his house. He played blues guitar all the time, right?
Yeah.
So one time he said, "Well, let's go. We're going to go to the South Bronx
Wow.
to a kind of a crummy neighborhood, but there's a church
Kind of
service."
crummy, yeah, so probably.
Yeah, but it was a church service.
Yeah,
And I'm not a religious person.
Yeah.
But where Annie Davis, who's Gary Davis's wife, was running the service.
Mm-hmm.
So what she would do is she would invite people who played music to come to the service. So it was one of the most memorable days of my life. I went to this service in the South Bronx with Annie Davis and Alan and others.
and all these people that.
And there were people playing blues guitars and whatever, and it was incredible. I mean, just, you know, incredible. And then in the middle of it all, that fellow, the blind accordion player, was there from Flushing, New York, and really a memorable scene. All these coins he's gathering, dumps them all in the collection plate.
Oh,
It was incredible.
Wow.
It was just incredible.
yeah.
You know, so I never passed him again
Without giving something, yeah.
and also just looking with tremendous respect
Yes.
for this gentleman. you
I
know.
do think there's a certain dignity to, you get, like the spare change vendors, I like that, because then I take a paper, I like the paper, because they're selling something and they're not just
Yeah.
looking for a handout, and
Yeah.
I think something, but, so anyway.
Yeah. I mean, but if you think about it, if you had a fellow like him who was out there playing accordion and somebody from the Arts Council came by, which they never would do because they're
Right.
good people, but say, excuse me, I need to
Yeah.
see that permit,
Right,
right?
Right.
You know,
Okay.
come on, cut them some
so
slack.
then there was the issue of the permit and requiring, I guess they got rid of the language about photo ID.
Yeah, I think so.
And so that made me think about, because Sumbul Siddiqui made some comment about how she loses her library card a lot and just keeps getting them, and we shouldn't charge. So I was just curious, I thought
I mean-
you needed a photo ID for the library
Yeah,
card.
there was
But
this
apparently
issue
you
about
do,
if
so
you-
maybe they make exceptions
if you
for
keep
homeless.
losing
But
your permit, you know, do you
keep
do
it-
you have to pay a fee to get a replacement?
it seems to me you should get it free the first time. If you keep losing, well, then there was a whole question: shouldn't it be electronic? And that is, they're
Right.
aiming for that.
You know, even at
Right.
college campuses, I think if you
Yeah.
they start charging you a fee if you keep losing your ID card.
So I'm just
But they
curious,
don't- they
someone
certainly don't
maybe,
charge you the
I don't
first
want to
time.
get the library into any, because I'm sure they must have exceptions to their photo
Yeah.
ID, but you do need a photo ID plus proof of address or something to get a library card.
Yeah.
And I called to make sure of that, because I saw it on the website. So I'm just saying, it's just life is,
Yeah.
sometimes you need to say who you are and
Sure,
somehow get
sure.
some kind of, letter or something that kind of confirms who you are,
So
which I think you can do,
Yeah.
right?
now another thing that was happened in this meeting, which was or on the agenda, I don't think I guess it was sort of a topic of discussion, is that so back I think it was in the summer. Was it in the summer when they had the thing that they were casting as the climate safety petition, zoning petition?
Oh, yeah.
Better known as the Brown Nakagawa
Yeah.
or Nakagawa Brown
Yeah.
petition.
Oh, yeah, that was a
And
little controversial,
and
yeah.
you know that petition actually had certain repercussions that might have made it hard to do renovations at
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
at I think one of the
nonprofit, yeah.
the
Housing authority,
housing authority
yeah.
buildings. There were some other reasons why maybe it was a little jumping a little too fast. You know, but of course some councilors think it can't be fast enough, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, it was not passed to a second reading, so
Right.
it died,
Because
and
it expired, yeah.
you can't simply refile it for another couple of years, even though some of the provisions certainly could be
Mm-hmm.
refiled and will be. But there was a promise made as part of an order from Councilor Toomey to ask that the city manager appoint a committee
Mm-hmm.
that would basically look at some of the provisions that were proposed
Mm-hmm.
together with some of the things the city was already in process doing,
Right.
which were many and are
Right.
many.
Yeah,
And then they would sort of basically come up with some recommendations, you know.
and it would be a representative group
Yeah, it would have to
from
be.
stakeholders,
Yeah,
residents,
stakeholders,
whatever, okay.
right. You don't want to just sort of have the petitioners,
Right,
you know, and then they basically say, screw the businesses or whatever.
Yeah.
So, you know, so the city's practice is
Mhm.
usually to bring in the stakeholders. So there was a committee of 25, including 4 city councils, which, that's new to me, I've never seen
Yeah.
that.
Well, even McGovern, I think later said, Mark,
Yeah.
maybe he was over, whatever.
Well, there's also kind of an oddity about that too. Apparently, you know, not to get into the weeds here too much, but the thing is, you know, the open meeting law is it's just like
Oh, right.
it's just like it's like
You
a
can't have more than,
it's like a straitjacket sometimes. And
Yeah.
so that was somebody says, well, the reason why we had 4 is that that's not a quorum of the city council. And then somebody, I think Councilor Devereaux said,
well, but
yeah,
it
but
is of
you've
the
got
subcommittee, yeah.
you've got 2 members here on one of the subcommittees. That's a quorum of that subcommittee, and they will
yeah.
be discussing matters that would
Right.
otherwise. Okay, so even the city solicitor had to say, "Oh, hadn't thought of that."
Yeah, right,
And in fact, if you look at the 4,
Yeah.
there were multiple violations of quorum rules.
yeah,
I'm kind of the no whistle, no foul school of reasoning, which
Hmm.
basically says if the state doesn't, if somebody doesn't come roaring in on a horse
Yeah.
saying you're
Yeah.
breaking the law, then just go ahead and do it.
yeah, and
But-
it happens every day. I mean, not
Yeah,
all groups
I mean, this is-
adhere to this,
yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, I think actually it was Quentin Zondervan actually came up with a what I think might have been a good resolution, but I don't think they're doing it, but they might,
Which is
which
what?
is they could recast this whole committee
Mhm.
as an ad hoc city council committee with those 4 members with these additional 21 members also as part of this ad hoc committee. And this way, whenever they meet, they would simply advertise it as a meeting of the ad hoc committee of the city council.
And then,
And
but
they
then
would
you have
meet
to have
all the
public
requirements.
comment and all. See, that was brought up. It's like, how can you have a lot of,
You
no?
don't necessarily have to have public comment.
On a committee meeting?
You have to have an open meeting, but it doesn't
Right.
necessarily
Oh, I thought you always have to
require-
allow that.
No, I mean, roundtable meetings of the city council are open
But
meetings.
that's different. Then you'd have to call it that.
Um,
I don't know. I just, that was, I didn't pay a lot of attention,
Yeah.
but there was discussion of that.
I mean, the thing is that public comment in Cambridge seems to be sort of our tradition, but if you go all around the state or the country, that's not always how it is.
But committee meetings, they generally have it at the end versus like a city
Right.
at the beginning, but a roundtable,
Well,
no.
it's-
But I've never seen one that did not have public comment.
Because it's written into the city council rules.
Oh, okay, all
But the
right.
city council doesn't have to
I
write that
see.
into their rules in
Okay.
another city.
So actually, so this could be open to the public, but you wouldn't be allowed
Yeah.
comment.
Now, whether they will or will, I don't think
Yeah.
that really matters. I think they were going to allow public comment anyway, but it would probably be
Right.
at the end.
Sure.
Though
Right.
it was
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of,
yeah.
it was a little curious when the mayor was saying like, well, I don't think it would be a good thing to allow public comment. It'll slow down the work of the
Well,
committee.
he was comparing
And I
more
was
to
like, what?
having a round table, which I
Yeah.
sort of understand.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people to talk.
Well, I mean, the thing is
Yeah.
that that's really where the role of the chair comes in. I mean, I
Yeah.
serve on Envision Cambridge and these working committees,
Mm.
whatever. If the chair is really just lax, then anybody just pipes in can actually derail a meeting.
True.
So you
have
sometimes
to have a good-
you gotta whack a pretty good gavel sometimes to say, no, I'm sorry, sir, but you'll have to wait until the appropriate time.
Uh-huh.
Right, so, there are right ways, but it's really about how do you manage these processes. So anyway, that became controversial. It was interesting on the Fresh Pond Residents Alliance, one of the petitioners, Michael Nakagawa, is actually
part of
appointed
it,
on the
right.
committee, and he says, he's looking at the appointments, and he says, I don't know if I even want to be part of this process, because he didn't like the fact that it seemed to be stacked, the deck was stacked. I don't know if it is, honestly, I don't think it is.
Varied, but I
It
don't
seems
know.
pretty varied. But these processes tend to work by consensus anyway. It's not
Yeah.
a matter of it, well, we need to outnumber this faction because when we vote on something, because most of these advisory committees, not most, all of these advisory committees don't really vote ever.
I know, we were on the
They-
recycling advisory committee, we did not
never
have a
had
vote.
votes.
We just advised.
You come
Yeah.
to consensus.
Right.
Maybe you all agree to issue a report or something
Right,
like
you
that.
can do that,
Make some recommendations, but
but
it's
nothing's
not.
binding, you don't have a
No,
vote. No.
definitely not. So I think it's all much ado about nothing
Mm.
ultimately. Now another item that was actually really significant, and it's not just in terms of the city council, was that there was a fatality on the McGrath Highway, the bridge, the Craigie Bridge,
Right.
where Museum Way meets it, which is the
Can you
road
kind of
to the north
physically
way.
tell me, I get confused about which direction everybody was going. So,
Okay, because it was misreported.
okay, I'm at the Galleria going towards McGrath or whatever,
So
right?
if you come out from the Galleria and then you could
The
make a
the
right.
museum is on my right.
So you go over the bridge.
Oh, I
and
go over the
museum's on
bridge.
your right, but
Yeah.
on the left there's a road that juts out, goes under the Green Line tracks,
under the
that goes
Green
to
Line tracks.
museum towers and Museum Way. All right, so
Oh.
yeah, so it's right there, and it is the
Yeah,
most
I'm
hot. I mean,
confused, but,
I lead
yeah.
local walks sometimes where we start at the Galleria Mall and then we come up the back by the Museum of Science and then we cross right there. There's a push button and you do that. And I have to say, it is one of the single most hostile locations for pedestrians, cyclists, motor vehicle operators, anywhere.
Okay.
Honestly, the fact that they even operate the Museum of Science, which has lots of children and
Yeah.
duck boats and everything,
Yeah.
and they're basically doing it in a space that sometimes feels like a breakdown lane on a highway. It's not really a good plan. And that bridge used to be a park. It was a road and a park, and then they built the
Okay,
Museum
I'm
of
still
Science on it.
confused. I am really confused about where we're located now.
It's on the downstream side, and the initial reports
Downstream
basically made
side.
it sound as though there was a dump truck coming from Boston toward Cambridge, stopped at Museum Way to make a right, and a cyclist in the same position to the right
Also
of the truck
wanting to make a
wanted
right.
to make a right. Now that's not true. What was true is they
Okay.
were coming out of Museum Way, at least this
Okay.
is how I understand it.
Uh-huh.
So they were facing toward the Museum of Science, and then they were both making a right to go toward Cambridge.
Okay.
And I mean, Museum Way is in Cambridge. Let's be clear about that.
Okay.
And the problem, you know, so there are multiple things here. First
Yes.
off, and you know, anybody who knows me or reads my ramblings knows I'm not a uniform believer in separated bicycling facilities. Most of the implementations I've seen so far are sort of ridiculous. But there are some places where it makes total sense. So for example, nobody's going to argue that it's not a good idea to have the Paul Dudley White bike path alongside Memorial Drive and Starr Drive, because you wouldn't want bicyclists on those roads.
Right.
It's ridiculous. You definitely want a separated facility for that. And I think you can make a case in a number of other places where it makes some sense to do that. I'm actually inclined to believe that on River Street coming from the Pike towards
I
Central
have to
Square.
admit it. I mean, my daughter lives on River Street, but I mean, there's not that much parking. There's no parking on the right side anyway. But it's not as wide as Western Ave. That's my only concern
But
there.
the problem is drivers haven't mentally slowed down
No.
yet. So
And it is a major thoroughfare.
and there's just a little too much friction.
Yep.
Right? This does not extend, in my view, to things like Brattle Street and Cambridge Street, whatever.
Or the smaller.
But the thing is that in some places it really makes sense.
Yeah. And there.
And you know, if you were wanted to go down toward Jamaica Plain along the Jamaica Way, that's kind of crummy because there's no way on earth you want to ride a bicycle on the Jamaica Way.
Right.
Right. So you need to have some facility, and it's actually pretty inadequate now.
Right, but at least it's there.
Well,
something.
maybe
It's
it is,
not
maybe
great.
it isn't.
Well,
you
it's
know?
also.
So you basically choose different roads.
Yeah.
But coming over the bridge, the Craigie Bridge, that really needs something, you know, and there's no question about it. And we go over to the Boston side where all the roads are converging to that needs something too.
Yeah.
Right? It's just too many opportunities to get, you know,
it's very busy.
Destroyed there.
Yeah.
So
it's
now,
unfortunate because the truck was stopped.
right. So
the cyclist was stopped.
Well, that's the thing is that, you know, over and above, and again, please don't accuse me of victim blaming here. But the truth is that yes, do some of these improvements.
But if you have a truck
as a cyclist
around you,
you should absolutely
totally
never,
vigilant,
ever be caught on to the right of any big vehicle. Maybe a car can see you, right? But a big vehicle like a bus or a truck or a dump truck, whatever, that may be making a right, whether they're signaling or not. Assume they're making a right. Just don't be there.
I mean, if they have the box thing that was brought up, maybe they could. I mean, it depends on the vehicle.
So if you could get in front of them, then they may see
that's
you.
what that green box.
But as we saw in the case of the Porter Square fatality, being in front of a large truck might actually be a place where they don't see you.
Well, that came up at the urban freight forum thing because certain trucks, but they're hopefully designing new trucks. That you
so I think Councillor Zondervan was particularly saying like, well, we ought to require that any trucks that are going to operate in Cambridge must have the side guards.
But he went to that urban freight forum too, and it was brought up that there's just certain things you can't do it. There's state and federal regulations.
I mean, to whatever degree you have any influence on anyone who's operating trucks in and around Cambridge to say, look, you really ought to be putting those side guards in.
And we've done the DPW has them now.
does it.
All
Some
of their
others,
trucks.
other vehicles are actually putting some on there.
Yeah.
There are also some other technologies, some sensors,
there's lots,
so that you can actually detect,
even
if you can't see.
Yeah, and also designing these
Alarms
windows
could go
now
off.
that are further. They're not these big cabs in front, so you can really have your vision is better.
I'm sure in the next iteration of motor vehicles, including trucks, there will be, you don't have to go all the way to driverless technologies to still have the sensors there to assist. So I think that the future is going to make it a little bit better.
Well, you know what I learned from this forum, which I knew about the Volpe Transportation Center. I didn't realize it was research and development. I never thought about that. And that we have the guy one of the top guys that spoke at this lives in Cambridge. Yeah. And all these ideas are coming. They're doing stuff for the country, and we have them right here in Cambridge.
Right. So some of these things, this is a lobbying issue, sort of like, try and get the state and federal authorities to start requiring things, make that the rule, but that's going to take years.
Yeah.
The notion that you can basically sort of have a cop at the border of Cambridge saying, I'm sorry, sir, you can't drive that truck through Cambridge unless it has a side guard is a pretty obvious violation of interstate commerce rules.
Yeah.
So, and I think everybody should be just understand that.
Yeah.
But over and above trying to do these infrastructure solutions, it's still the ultimate responsibility of personal safety still goes to the operator. Whether
No,
it's the
it's true.
pedestrian, you know, when you get told that when you're a little kid, don't forget to look both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the truth is, if you're crossing a street in a city setting, it's not enough to look both ways.
Yep.
You have to look left, you have to look right,
And then you signal.
and you have to look around,
Right,
because
but
it's
also-
the vehicle making a turn around
At
you.
night, I just wave my hand at any driver, make sure they see me
I
crossing.
look the drivers
Exactly.
in the eye. I make
Yeah.
very loud,
Because
almost
I'm just-
comical hand signals.
Yeah, I mean, as a pedestrian, as a cyclist,
Yes.
and as a driver, I am
Yeah.
constantly terrified. I'm
So,
just,
so
you know, it's
yes,
just-
so cities and
Yeah.
states can do
Yeah.
things to make things better, but it still
Just
comes
pay
down
attention.
to you as a pedestrian and a cyclist
yeah.
to understand
Get
what
the earphones
where-
out. Do
right.
not.
But what
you
are the
know,
really
yeah.
dangerous things? And
Yes.
for the most part, just riding parallel to a vehicle is usually not a problem.
But if
which
it's
is-
much bigger than you,
or much
Ooh.
faster than you,
And faster than you,
so
right.
the differential speed becomes an
Right.
issue.
right?
You know, one of the reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of some of the separated cycle tracks is that it's not addressing the real problem, which is the real hazards at intersections.
It's in.
And sometimes it
exactly.
can actually exacerbate some of those
No,
problems.
that's a good point.
You know, but you know, this is sort of almost turned to religion for some people. You know,
Yeah,
so you can't
I
even
know.
talk to them; they just
I
think
know.
you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a topic of discussion, and it's really important. And
And I think
what
there's
comes
going to
of
be
it, I don't know.
further discussed, I think, at a meeting between public safety and transportation. Might be a combined meeting next week, I believe, on the
Yeah.
28th.
Yeah, and I just
So-
sort of hope they can stay focused on the actual hazards rather than, you know, the separate agendas. You know,
Yeah.
because there are some things that can be done. You
Yep.
know, and that does include a little more education.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
and again, I'm not a person who harangues cyclists, but you know, I even last night walking to City Hall, I actually a cyclist with no lights on
Oh, I see that all the time at night.
comes up
Yep.
here, and then
Mhm.
cars pulling out, and he just screams with resentment, but
Yeah.
he was kind of in the wrong. So
Yep. Yep. Yep.
anyway,
All right. Next week we're
see you
here,
next
right?
week.
Yep.